The screech of an approaching train shattered the quiet valley. Bound in thick ropes, blood drying on his cheek, Dante Morelli, once the most feared Mafia boss in the city, lay helpless beside the tracks. Just a few feet away, the rails began to vibrate, and from the shadows of the pine trees, a small girl's voice echoed, "Mama, someone's there." "He's still alive!" That voice would change everything, not just for him, but for them too. Because sometimes, the people we save are the ones who were sent to save us. Rain lashed down over the countryside road as Clara, a nurse at a rundown clinic, gripped the steering wheel of her rusted old car. Beside her in the back seat, her 8-year-old daughter Leah slept wrapped in a blanket. They were returning from a night shift. Clara had just finished a 14-hour duty, her eyes heavy, but her heart still soft as ever. Life hadn't been kind to Clara. Her husband had left when Leah was just a baby, leaving behind debts and a promise he never kept. Since then, she'd been surviving on small shifts, patching wounds and comforting the sick in a clinic that barely paid her enough to buy bread and milk. But she never complained, because her daughter's laughter was worth more than gold. That night, the rain made the road nearly invisible. The headlights cut through the mist just enough for Clara to see a fallen branch blocking the narrow path. She sighed, pulled over, and stepped out to move it. That's when she heard it, faint, distant, and horrifying. A muffled cry for help. At first, she thought her mind was playing tricks. But then it came again. Louder this time, desperate, echoing from somewhere beyond the trees. Clara froze. Every instinct told her to get back in the car, to drive away. But her nurse's heart, that same heart that never ignored pain, pushed her forward. "Leah, stay inside, sweetheart," she called. But Leah, curious and brave like her mother, had already stepped out, clutching her small flashlight. "Mama, what's that sound?" The two followed the voice through the forest path until they reached the old railway line. And that's when the beam of Leah's light fell on someone, lying by the tracks. A man, bound, bleeding, barely breathing. Clara's breath caught. Oh my God! His suit was torn, his face bruised, his wrists tightly knotted with thick ropes. There were bruises on his neck, and his dark hair was matted with mud and blood. But even through all that, Clara noticed something else, the unmistakable aura of power, danger, and broken pride. The man opened his eyes weakly, gasping for air. "Help me!" Clara dropped beside him instantly, her training taking over. She felt his pulse, faint but steady. "You're going to be okay," she whispered, more to convince herself than him. But then, the ground began to shake. A low rumble echoed through the forest. The train was coming. Leah's eyes widened. "Mama, it's coming!" Panic shot through Clara's veins. There wasn't much time. She tried to untie the knots, but they were soaked and tightened with mud. Her trembling fingers slipped again and again. She grabbed a rock, using it to smash at the ropes, her palms bleeding. The man coughed, voice cracking. "You shouldn't be here! Run!" "Not without you!" Clara shouted, breathless. The sound of the train grew louder, a thunderous scream in the distance. Leah tugged at her mother's arm. "Mama, hurry!" Clara's heart pounded as she finally managed to loosen one knot. She tore at it until it gave way. Another followed. The light from the train's headlamp burst through the darkness, a blinding white fury charging toward them. With a cry of sheer willpower, Clara pulled the man free just as the train roared past, a storm of wind and noise throwing them to the ground. The world blurred. Metal clanged. Then, silence. When the dust settled, Clara opened her eyes. The train was gone, the man lay limp in her lap, and her daughter was crying softly beside her. Clara's hands shook as she checked his pulse again. "Still alive," she whispered, tears of relief falling down her cheeks. She didn't know who he was. She didn't care. She only knew that no human deserved to die like that. As she carried him toward the car with Leah's help, she noticed a gun tucked inside his jacket and a tattoo on his neck she'd seen before in newspaper crime stories. Her breath hitched. This wasn't just any man. He was Dante Morelli, the feared Mafia boss whose name had once made the city tremble. But tonight, he was just a broken man who needed saving. Clara hesitated, torn between fear and compassion. "What have I done?" she whispered to herself. Yet when she looked at his pale face, she felt something strange. Not fear, but pity. Maybe everyone deserved one chance to start over. She laid him in the back seat, covered him with a blanket, and started the car. Leah, watching silently, finally spoke. "Mama." Why did they hurt him? Clara glanced at her daughter's innocent face and sighed. "Sometimes, sweetheart, people forget how to be human, but we don't have to." As they drove through the misty road toward their small house, the man stirred again, whispering something Clara couldn't quite catch. A name, maybe, or a prayer. And in that moment, she had no idea that saving him would change their lives forever. For better, or for worse. The first light of dawn crept through the thin curtains of Clara's cottage, washing the small room in soft gold. A kettle whistled weakly on the stove, while Leah sat cross-legged on the floor, drawing flowers on an old piece of cardboard. The faint scent of boiled herbs and wet wood filled the air. On the couch lay Dante Morelli, the man who once ruled half the city through fear, now wrapped in a faded blanket, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. His bruises had begun to darken, his lips cracked from dehydration, but he was alive. Clara sat beside him, pressing a damp cloth against his forehead. Her hands trembled every time she touched him, not from fear, but from disbelief. She'd treated hundreds of patients, beggars, laborers, drunkards, but never someone like him. The newspapers had called him the Iron Wolf of Verona. The police had called him untouchable. And yet, here he was, broken, human, and vulnerable. When his eyes finally opened, they were sharp, cold, but confused. He blinked against the sunlight, his voice rough as gravel. "Where am I?" Clara hesitated before answering. "Somewhere safe. You were hurt. I couldn't leave you there." He struggled to sit up, wincing from the pain in his ribs. His gaze darted around, the cracked walls, the tiny table, the smell of medicine. "Why?" he asked after a long pause. "Why would you help a man like me?" Clara sighed. "Because no one else would." He looked at her, studying her face, the tired eyes, the faint scar near her temple, the steady hands of someone who'd seen too much suffering. "You don't know who I am." "I do," she said quietly, "and I still would have done the same." The silence that followed was heavy. Leah peeked up from her drawing and smiled shyly. "Mama says everyone deserves a second chance," she chirped. Dante's eyes softened for a brief moment. Something in that child's innocence disarmed him more than any gun ever could. Over the next few days, Clara tended to his wounds carefully. She made him herbal tea, changed his bandages, and tried to ignore the shadows moving outside her window at night. Shadows she feared were looking for him. Dante barely spoke, but sometimes, when he thought she wasn't watching, he'd glance at the small photograph on the wall, a man holding a baby, now faded with time. Clara's late husband, the life she once had. One night, as rain pattered on the roof again, Dante finally broke the silence. "You're not afraid of me?" Clara didn't look up from the bandage she was rewrapping. "I've seen worse things than men with scars and guns. What could be worse than men like me?" She met his gaze, calm, unflinching. "Hopelessness." Dante looked away. "You should have left me there. People like me don't deserve saving." Clara's hands paused. "Everyone deserves saving, whether they want it or not." Her words hit him harder than a bullet. For years he'd lived by a simple law, power or death. Compassion had no place in his world. But sitting there in that tiny room with peeling wallpaper, he felt something he hadn't in decades. Shame. And oddly, gratitude. Days turned into a week. Dante regained strength slowly, and though he hit it, he began helping, fixing the broken fence, carrying firewood, even making Leah laugh once with an awkward story about a pet tiger he used to own. The child thought it was make-believe. Clara knew better. But peace doesn't stay long when the past has blood on its hands. It was a cold morning when Clara heard it, the crunch of tires on gravel outside. 2 black cars, men in suits stepping out, their faces hard and familiar from the news. Leah looked up, worried. "Mama, who are they?" Clara's heart dropped. "Get inside. Don't make a sound." Dante was already by the window, his face pale. "They found me," he muttered. His voice, once commanding, now trembled. "They think I betrayed them," Clara whispered fiercely. "Then you need to leave, now!" "I can't," he said. "If they find you with me—" A loud knock cut through his words. Then another, heavier. "We know you're in there, boss," a voice sneered from outside. "Come out and maybe we'll make it quick." Leah clutched her mother's dress, whispering, "Mama, I'm scared." Clara's pulse raced. She turned to Dante. "There's a back door. Go!" He stared at her, jaw tight. "They'll kill you if they see me here." "Then go before they do." For the